Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I am your host, Sal, with my co-host Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Sal? We're back after a bad Giants loss, but a great weekend of college football. So we'll take the good with the bad.
Fun weekend of college ball, less fun weekend of Giants football. We'll get into that in a second. This episode, we will be going over the upcoming tight end class of the 2025 grouping. Um, Little teaser, I guess, is we were both, I think, somewhat surprised that we were pleased with what we saw in this class. Better
Yeah.
than I think what we expected as we watched the film on the guys we went over. So I think you guys will enjoy this episode. And we're going to take one of these guys because Joe Shane and the Giants love drafting tight ends in the fourth round. So at pick 104, one of these guys is a Giant, guaranteed.
That's what we do, man. We take a tight end every single year.
But before we go into Giant stuff, number one, housekeeping stuff. Always, you can reach me at Queens_guy. You can reach Monty at Monte Cristo, spelled MONTECRI5TO. You can find us at He's a Giant Pod. Hit the like button when you watch us. Subscribe to the YouTube. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. Tell your friends, and if you're already in the chat, feel free to go ahead and retweet the message and get the word out. We appreciate all of you guys who join us. And if you're enjoying the Mets game, keep enjoying it. Keep it on in the background and tune into us. And that's what I'm not going to do it exactly. I'm going to try to tune in because this is torture. I've been a lifelong Mets fan, Monty, since 1984. Hardcore.
Go ahead. Do what you got
yeah.
to do, man. Just do the show with me and put it on wherever you need to.
I became a Mets fan as a kid watching a rookie named Dwight Gooden pitch for the Mets. And that's when I got hooked on baseball. And I'll tell you the story. I got hooked on it because my first sport, this is back in the era where things were still black and white, like real life was actually black and white, like the Truman Show.
Yeah.
Like Friday nights, as a kid, I used to go to the back TV. We had two TVs, which was a big luxury in those days in our apartment. And I used to go to the back TV and go to Channel 9 in New York, which was WOR. And Friday nights, the reason I used to watch that is because they used to have the Knicks on a lot on Friday night on that station. So I used to enjoy watching basketball. My favorite player in those days was an old player named Bernard King. If you've heard of the guy, famous Knick. And I used to tune in. And one Friday night, it wasn't basketball, but it was the Mets that were on. And I started watching baseball. Rookie named Dwight Gooden was pitching, and I was like, "Who's this?" And I thought that was normal. For those who don't know, he was electric. He won Rookie of the Year that year. Would have been a Hall of Famer if he didn't get addicted to crack. So things happen.
How it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Mets are in the playoffs, and it's in the seventh inning in the wild card round. So they're up 3-2, middle of the seventh. If they can close out this game, they win the series and move on to face the Philadelphia Phillies. But anyway, that aside, crack. That's right, James. He was addicted to crack. That was the 80s, man. Everybody was addicted to crack in those days. So that's just how it was. Anyway, so getting back to, speaking of crack, by the way, let's talk about the Giants. How about the Giants? What are we doing with this team, Monty? We played the Dallas Cowboys last week right after we had our episode, and we lost. We didn't lose a game that we got blown out in or a game that we were overmatched in. The Cowboys looked pretty pedestrian, but we lost. So what were your thoughts coming out of that game?
Yeah, man. I mean, I was at the game. Buddy Will was kind enough to invite me and let me sit in his season ticket section. So that was nice. And, it was there and it was cool being at the game. It was a fun game, but the Giants seemed to just come up short every single time. We didn't get to see a single touchdown that day. Despite opportunities that it felt like we did have opportunities to score there. I know a lot of people are mad at Daniel Jones, and I understand why they're upset because, if we had a better quarterback, it felt like that there was opportunities to take advantage. But to be honest, Daniel Jones played well for Daniel Jones. He just fell victim to the normal issues that guy's had for multiple years now. The main one being hit his deep shots, and he's a limited player, and it limits our offense. And it sucks we have been so horrific in getting into the end zone. Whether it's when we get in close, I really think we should have went for it on the 3-yard line there. I thought that was a huge pussy call by Dable to kick field goal there, because it's really the only time we got that close, and I felt like there's opportunities to take shots and we didn't get them. Like that game was for the taking, and it was disappointing to see us, come up with a loss there. But it's when you're limited on offense like we are, that type of shit happens.
You know what really pissed me off about that particular drive? You were at the game. I don't know if you remember the details, but on that drive, we had like first and goal from like the 10 or something, or from the 9. Went nowhere on first down. We had like a 2nd and 9 or something, a second and goal from the 9, and we ran the ball. And
Mm-hmm.
when they ran the ball, I thought to myself, okay, this is 4 down territory. Like, you're running it just to get closer because you're going to use all 4 downs here. You're not going to waste a, a play in the red zone here on a run on second down if you're going to kick a field goal. And even Dan Duggan tweeted that out in real time. He's like, you got to be thinking this is 4 down. This is 4 down territory if they're going to run here. And then on third down, they threw the pass to Wandale, and he got caught at, I think, the 4-yard line or the 3-yard line, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, they're going for it. And then they kicked the field goal. I'm like, if you were going to kick the field goal, why did you call those plays? Right? Why did you call a run on second down? Why did you run a play designed to go to Wandale in the flat? You know, on third down with where basically you're depending on Wandale turning the corner and outrunning the defense into the end zone. That's like, why not throw it in the end zone at that point, right? So it was weird bunch of plays.
Yeah. And, something I think you need to start thinking about more with this, and I'm sure we'll factor more into, analytics tell you to go for it there. But I think that's going to be more and more hammered home because, you look at, the new field goal rules, and more often than not, these teams are now being put to start out on the 30-yard line. And you saw it, the Dallas Cowboys. They did not have to drive very far to get into field goal range with their kicker. And, when you have the two options of actually like putting them far enough back where it might not be a scoring drive, or you get a touchdown, it feels like not necessarily a win-win, but, there's at least something to, get from not getting that touchdown, especially,
Yep.
how good their kicker is and starting from the 30-yard line now.
Anyway, losing teams find ways to lose. I don't know what else there is to say about this team.
Yeah.
Go figure out a way to win. We'll talk about whatever comes next. A lot of discussion this week on Spaces about, and the timeline about quarterbacks they'll pick, and I guess it's natural, but I'm like, I can't. I was telling Jabri, who's here, I was like, I can't do this on October 2nd, dude. Like, I can't have this discussion on October 2nd of who we may mock draft at the quarterback in like the 9th or 10th spot. Like, it's driving me crazy to even think about it. Like, I just want to get through the season.
And
We'll watch these kids, but man, like, the idea that we're already thinking about this is just so aggravating as a fan. It's October 2nd.
at least with like last year when things were going bad, like it's like you have like these quarterbacks you've been looking at for like 2 years. Right now,
Right.
it's like we're getting hyped over like 1 week performances by these guys. Because this the guy? Is this
Right.
the guy? Like,
Last year when things were falling apart, we're like, did we just tank at the right time? Like, are we going to get Caleb Williams of all years? And of course,
mhm.
no. So anyway, so I don't know what else to say. They're playing the Seahawks this week. They have the Sunday night game right now, and NBC is desperately trying to flex them out because nobody wants
CBS wouldn't let him have the Ravens
the
Washington game.
good. Screw them. Who wants to see two running backs go back and forth anyway? Anyway, that's gonna piss off some people. I don't care. I enjoy saying it. All right, so let's get into this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much in the Giants world. People are here to try to escape from it. And I know, tight end might not be the sexiest position group in the world, but hey, I had fun looking at these guys. There is some really interesting guys in this group. And I think, there is no Brock Bowers. There's some guys we like, but I think all things considered, I'm much more excited about this tight end group than I was about last year's.
Hey, and we didn't discuss that. Is there any way you can share the grades on the screen? Is there a
Yeah,
way to
let me
do
see
that?
what I can do. See if I can get the PFF ones up. Maybe I can do it that way.
No, I mean our tables. I mean,
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I could just share our draft guide while we're doing it. We can do it
okay,
that way.
that's perfect. We can just scroll through so people can see what we're doing. Because we told people
Yeah.
asked me, and I thought it was good input from Stan and some other people that it would be cool if we just put up like the graphics and what we were looking at. And I do think since we're using the grading system this year, it would be good to show you guys what we're doing. So,
Yeah,
as
we'll
with
try to
the
get something cleaner in the future with maybe
yeah,
some slides or something, but we can do
yeah,
this for now.
absolutely. Oh, by the way, guys, if you don't mind, please retweet. Since you just joined us, if you can retweet that we're live, send the message out. We would appreciate it. And I know some of you already have, so I appreciate that already. Um, but so as you guys know, those have been with us, we have a scoring system for each position group. We have been using the Bill Walsh guide to figure out like the attributes and the things we're looking at to grade and score per player. And again, just a quick reminder, it's a 1 to 5 scoring system. 1 is basically horrible. 2 is a below average NFL trait or player. 3 is an average NFL production. 4 is where we see above average or kind of like maybe even like an above average to like borderline Pro Bowl type player, like trait or starter level. And 5 is like an all pro level. So those are the scores we give. We usually grade out about 6 scores and then average that out. And then we have 3 separate grades that we don't average into the composite score. So the features we looked at, I'll just go through them quickly for tight ends are, these are things that Bill Walsh mentioned. And we combined it with what we like because
Yeah.
the game has changed, obviously, since Bill Walsh wrote his guide. Although a lot of it is still there, right?
Yeah, I remember when we were going through it, Sal, one thing they said was like, he's like, you want a tight end that runs at least like a 5 second 40. It's like, okay, this
Right.
or it's like this Tony Gonzalez guy is gonna be a star one day.
Right, and that's the thing. Like he said all the thing about like a 5 second 40, but he's like, you want a guy who can maybe block, you want a guy who can maybe run routes. He's like, you have to. He's like, sometimes if you do it right, you might get a guy who does both, but they're hard to find. And he's like, and because you find guys like that, some very rarely, he's like, I kind of think this kid out of Cal, Tony Gonzalez, might be the kind of kid that could end up in the Hall of Fame. He actually wrote that while the kid was
He
in
did.
college.
It
Like,
was wild.
Bill Walsh was incredible, man.
Yeah. So, we try to, use what we've seen works tight ends in today's, but also, stick to, one of the greatest football minds that's
So
ever.
our 6 scoreable great like areas of grading for tight ends are speed and quickness, which we'll use in a lot of things. Route running, hands, yak ability. This is a big one for tight
Mhm.
ends. Blocking and versatility. So so we're going to get a grade for all those, and those will be averaged out on each player to give a composite score. And then the 3 grades that we are not factoring into the composite score, which are kind of more subjective grades from our end, are player IQ, which does matter a lot for tight ends, the Giants grade, the Giants fit grade, and the Goon grade, which we do for everybody. We'll have an all Goon squad later. Um, so we reviewed 6 guys that we put on the final list, and everybody's heard of the main guy that's in this class, but we're ranking them based on how we score them on these composite traits, and we're kind of just seeing is this are we getting good data out of this, right? Are we finding good players? So bear with us. You're going to see rankings you don't really understand, but we're just going by how just learning from the guru himself and how he scores things and how he values certain traits. We're trying to do that to be objective in our way. So um, we did this and we had a surprise number one. It was not the number one tight end that everybody thinks is going to be the number one tight end. And so, Monty, do you want to take our number one tight end here?
Sure, I'll go for it. And I don't think you'll be that surprised with a lot of the rest of the way here, but the first one a lot of you guys probably haven't heard of yet, but it's somebody who has been really taking over college football this year. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end, 6'4", only 230 pounds out of Bowling Green. He was a 0-star recruit, junior, first team All MAC last year, and he's on the Mackey Award watch list this year. You know, starting out there, it's not necessarily the guy that you would be like, this is going to be tight end one. This is who I want. I mean, 230 pounds. I'll tell you, when you watch him play, he does not look like he's 230 pounds. I was shocked when I saw that weight. And I'll tell you, I watched him versus Penn State. I watched him versus Texas A&M. I wasn't just watching him versus like regular old MAC schools. Like this guy was putting on a clinic against like top line programs. We'll go over some stats before I get into some of what we liked about him here. I for most of these guys, I didn't include their 2024 stuff, but because he's been so impressive in just 1 month of play here, I felt like it was worth adding. So, we'll go over the 2023 impressive 85.8 PFF grade, 90.7 receiving grades, 65.8 run blocking, very solid. He had 44 receptions, 623 yards, and 6 touchdowns last year. We have some other advanced analytics here that we can go over as we go through it. But, if you're looking at it this year, he's been one of the best players in college football. Like I said, like 2 of the 5 games he's played this year has been against high-end competition. Bowling Green almost pulled up that upset against Penn State this year, and he was the reason why. That if you'd be like, wow, why did Bowling State almost beat Penn State? Harold Fannin is why they almost beat Penn State. 95.3 PFF grade, 95.8 receiving grade, 68.3 run blocking grade. Already on the season, 37 receptions, 541 yards, 4 TDs. He has 4.39 yards per route run. That's like wide receiver, like elite wide receiver yards per route run.
That's
Like
like
elite.
Jerry Rice, right? Yards per
That's
route
like,
run.
I mean, that's like numbers Malik Neighbor. It's like better than Malik Neighbor's numbers last year. Like it's insane. 16 missed tackles forced is like double any other tight end in college football right now. He is a real stud. But getting to some of the stuff that I liked about him, I said he played bigger than his size. He, had true wide receiver skills. This is a guy who, he played wide receiver in high school. As you can see by some of these stats, he's a huge threat after the catch. When he has great balance and he's a very physical runner. Like he is very, very difficult to take down. He just bodies these guys, especially his defensive backs. I felt like he could really hold his own as a blocker, especially for that size. He did not look 230 pounds he's blocking. They had good body control. He had really strong hands. He had 0 drops the last 2 years. So he has 0 drops so far this year, 0 drops last year. I don't think he's like the most natural pass catcher in the world, but he's very solid. Obviously reliable. I think he still needs to work on some of his nuance from the tight end position. Obviously he's undersized, and I didn't think he's a very good athlete. But for a 230-pound guy, I didn't think he was like that elite athlete. He's more of a bigger guy. But the way he plays. But what'd you think of him, Sal?
Yeah, this guy was a monster. I remember. So when we do this, we come up with like a composite list of a bunch of names, and we trim it based on who we watch and where we grade them out, and we do our independent scoring. And then I did my scoring, and I just talked to Monty, and I'm like, who scored the highest for you? And we were both like Harold Fannin Jr. Like
Yeah,
we were shocked that he was above, the guy who we thought would be number one. But it, I mean, I actually didn't. It was so ridiculous. I didn't trust my score, and I was like, I had to have done something wrong here. I'm gonna go back and watch more. I was like, I must have overgraded this guy, and I did. I went back and I'm like, no, we were just right on, and with how we felt on him the first look, like we're not changing this. So, um, you mentioned his numbers, and I think I just want to dive into them real quick because you went over all the most important stuff. But I mean, these numbers, Monty, these are stupid numbers. Like you mentioned the yards per route run at 4 point whatever it was, 4.39 this year. Even last year, 2.62, and I know that's a lot less of
very.
2.62 is like a day 2 wide receiver number.
Yeah, that's like an average wide receiver, and for like a tight end. Like
Right.
I could try to pull up some PFF numbers comparison while you
But
talk, but like
his
it's really good.
he has no drops. Listen to this. So we mentioned yak is huge for tight ends, right? We like, especially for this guy. I'm pointing to Monte. He loves guys who can get yak in the tight end position. But he's right.
I
Like
do.
you want tight ends who could take the ball, bounce off tackles and keep getting more yardage in the middle of the field, or if they're running like wheel routes, however you want to use them, they're the guys who can break tackles and get more yardage. A good number is like if you can get to 5 yards per reception yak, right? That's like a really good number.
Really good,
Um,
yeah.
really good. And we're looking for numbers like that for like the elite guys. This guy's at 8.4 yards per yak per reception. 8.4. That's ridiculous. And if you look at the last couple of years, last year, 9.2 yak per reception. The year before that, 9.4 yak per reception. This is not a fluke. It's who he is. This guy gets a ton of yak. He breaks tackles. Listen to these missed tackles for us. Like if you're talking about like these tight ends, if they force like, I don't know, 5 to 7 missed tackles, like it's good. He had 13 missed tackles for us last year. In 4 games this year, he has 16 missed tackles forced in four
Insane.
games. This guy is not real. He's just ridiculous. I think you're going to hear his name like surging as the year goes on. You can't hide this kind of talent and production. So I see Don just got here. Don, this is your guy. We're talking about tight end one on our ranking system, Harold Fannin Jr. So everybody who doesn't know, Don posted about him the other day, and I was like, I don't want to say too much, but Don knew.
Yep.
Don knew without talking to us. So
We were like,
you
I
know,
was like, you're gonna want to tune. I know Don's gonna tune in anyway, but I'm like, you're gonna want to tune in if this is
tune
your
in
guy.
early. So
Yeah,
this guy is a freak. We both have him ranked above the consensus top one guy, top tight end. And like you said, he's a little undersized, but it doesn't show on film. He's probably insanely yoked up because he knocks dudes over when he's running. Like they try to hit him, he bounces off them. He uses spin moves. He's got start and stop. He can change direction, and he just bowls people over. I mean, he moves like an elite receiver. Doesn't have the speed of an
yeah.
elite receiver, but like his short area quickness is very impressive. So yeah, tight end one, Harold Fannin Jr. Man, you want to go
I
through his
want to.
grades? Yeah,
I want to give you some context. I just pulled up some PFF numbers, just to add some context to how impressive these numbers are. So, first to start with that missed tackles force number 16. If from every wide receiver, not just tight end, from every wide receiver and tight end, that leads the entire country. So it's not just tight ends. He's ahead of every single wide receiver in the country too. And then looking at yards per route run that we mentioned, like obviously, 4.39 is ridiculous, but like do not underestimate what 2.62 is. 2.62 from last year, the only tight end who had better yard per route run
Brock
was Brock
Bowers.
Bowers,
Yeah,
the only one with 2.65. He was number 2 in the country last year, ahead of Ben Sinnott, you were a big fan of, was 4. Colson Loveland, we'll get to him at some point today. And like if we do yak per reception, he was number 1 in the country. Brock Bowers was number 2. Like absolutely insane numbers. You can see the fact that he's right next to Brock Bowers with those. And yes, I know he had weaker competition. Brock Bowers played in the SEC. Harold Fan fair, especially for a full season last year. But very early in this year, he's played some strong competition and he's put up freakish numbers despite that. So Harold Fan's the real deal. And seeing him do it against real competition is what made me comfortable putting him 1 on this list and not trying to you know, downplay some of his numbers. And we'll get into our grades for him right now. But because like I felt like maybe if I was only looking for his MAC competition, I might want to knock it down a little bit. But I saw it versus SEC team and number 8 team in the country when they played him. Like this is good competition.
all right, let's get in the grades. So we just want to show you guys what we work with on our end. This is our worksheet. We have like this huge file that we're like all the players. This year we're actually trying to be a little bit more organized. So we have this gigantic work file that we share that keeps all the grades and all of our notes on every single player we're reviewing. So when we go back at the end of the year, we'll look at this and kind of compare notes and see where these guys landed. But as we told you, the 6 areas that we're measuring for the composite score are speed, quickness, route running, hands, yak, blocking, and versatility. So for speed and quickness, I think we both gave him a 3. So that's an average NFL skill level. I think that's about right. I think he's kind of an average speed guy. Yeah, and by the way, Monty's always the he always has the first grade, and I have the grade under him on all of these. So, um, for route running, we both gave him a 4. We both thought that he was an above average route runner, even from compared to NFL level tight ends already. And I think we mentioned why already. Hands, you gave him a 4. I actually gave him a 5 here. He doesn't drop anything. So I mean, he plucks balls out of the air. I saw zero weakness with his hands here. I don't. Is there a reason you didn't give him a 5? You're muted or something.
Yep, I muted myself. My bad. So yeah, so the reason I didn't give him a 5 is like I feel like he has very, very reliable hands. I feel like he has strong hands. I just don't think he has as like natural soft hands as some of these other guys in here. I think that um they're very good, you know, 4 is still a very good score, but they're not to like elite level. I think more there's there's more he could do at like a high level with them than but he has a really high like floor with his hands, kind of the way I'd put it.
Okay. Yeah, I just couldn't give a guy who has no drops, and like I'm watching in this film, like how he just plucks balls out of the air. I couldn't give him anything less than a 5, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yak, we both gave him a 5. Like that's elite category, elite production for him,
I
and you
mean,
see
you
it on
heard the
film.
numbers. It
Yeah,
shows up on tape.
blocking, we both gave him a 3. He's an average blocker. I mean, I don't think he was a very good, like he wasn't like a good blocker. He wasn't a bad blocker. I think he's a in line. He's okay. I didn't think he was the greatest pass blocker. I think he chips well, but he's not someone I expect at his size to take on defensive ends.
Yeah, I'll
Um,
say we're going to be talking a lot about guys who are like 250 plus pounds. He had a much better anchor than a lot of those guys from what I saw, which was surprising me.
he's definitely not a liability in the blocking game.
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was an elite skill or anything
Agree.
special.
So
Like,
I'll
yeah,
I'll I'll say we didn't really talk about this too much, but this is kind of something I kept in my head when I was grading this. If I don't think your blocking ability it was good enough for you to just like if you failed in the NFL as a receiver and it didn't work out, could you hang on as a blocker and a blocker only? Like I would give you a 4 or 5. But if you without that receiving ability, I felt like you would probably not find a spot in the league. I'm going to give you a 3 or less. That's kind of how I rationalized it in my head.
versatility. We both gave him a 4, so he lines up all over the place.
Mhm.
So I'll read the numbers off to you guys really quickly. So far this year, 39% of his snaps are in the slot, 21% of his snaps are out wide, and 37% are in line. So they use him everywhere, and that's a really like fair distribution. He's basically out there on every play. Um, so your score averaged out to a 3.83. Mine averaged out to a 4,
Mhm.
which is really high. I mean, we have them both graded out essentially as an above average NFL player
I
right
mean,
now.
4 is like right up there with Mason Graham and like Genty and Will Johnson. So it's very high. It's a good grade.
Now, the ones we don't grade it, we don't factor into the overall grade. We both gave him an average NFL football IQ at 3. There was nothing that was glaring. I didn't see him do like incredible things.
Yeah, he's
There
a
were
little more
times,
nuanced to the position, I think, still.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he did play linebacker before. He was a converted linebacker.
D-back.
Was he a D back? I think he was a
Mhm.
linebacker. Okay,
No, defensive back.
okay. Um, The Giants grade, you gave him a 4, I gave him a 3. I want to give him a 5, but just like how many tight ends are we going to freaking
Yeah,
take?
I
So,
I know. He's the only one I gave a 4 to just because he's so damn good.
and we gave him a goon grade of 4 because watch him on tape. He's just bowling people over. He's not violent, like he's not trying to kill people. He's just embarrassing people, and I like that. So, um, yeah, tight end 1 for us, Harold Fannin Jr.
Yep. All right. You want to introduce our next guy, Sal?
Yep. So tight end 2 for us, bit of a surprise. Colston Loveland from the University of Michigan. 6'5", 245 pounds, 4-star recruit in his junior year. He was 2023 first team All Big Ten. His PFF grades in 2023 had a 75.5 overall PFF grade, 80.5 receiving, 51 run blocking. So that is an issue. We'll get to that. His stats last year: 45 receptions, 649 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2.38 yards per route. There you go. 2.38 yards per route run. So that's a good number for a tight end.
Yeah, he was right up
This
there.
Right. And the other guy's at 4 point something. Five drops, which was 10%. It's a little on the high side for a tight end. It's a little on the high side. But I think we'll get to why later. 5.5 yak per reception. So that's a really good number. 5.5. Four missed tackles force, 45 and a half complete like contested catch percentage. So hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate you coming up and appreciate the comment.
Appreciate it, Matt.
Uh,
Listen to Matt. Thanks for stopping by.
yeah, exactly. Matt knows ball. Listen to Matt. Um, so Colson Loveland was everybody's consensus tight end one. He still is for most people. I think we're probably the only ones who are coming out and saying he's not. And it kind of pains me to say that because I loved watching this kid play last year on that national title team.
So good.
He's such a target, and he was JJ McCarthy's he was his go-to guy in the middle of the field. He was his big target. His greatest skill is those soft hands that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
For those who remember, JJ throws everything 180 miles per hour. At least he did in the middle of the field, and he would just fire rifles at this guy. Loveland would be running up the seam, turning his body to like run the corner, and then this ball's like thrown, and he just reaches his hand back a little bit here and just like softly plucks it out of the thin air and just keeps moving it. He has this ability to like just grab the ball as if it wasn't like thrown like with velocity or thrown behind him or anything and just keep moving, right? He has this incredible ability to just pluck the ball in the air, just keep moving. Doesn't seem to affect his route running. High points really well, is able to hide the ball from defenders very well. He's an elite receiver at the catch point. He's a good blocker. I would not say he's an elite blocker. Like I'm thinking tight end one, I'm comparing him in my mind to Brock Bowers last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not as good a blocker as Brock Bowers was. Brock Bowers was a real asset in the run game and even as an inline blocker. Although there's a guy on our list who was I thought a better inline blocker than Brock Bowers from the same team. But I would say this guy's a decent blocker. He's actually decent in line. I think his run blocking left a little bit to be desired, especially when he's in motion. When he's as a move blocker, I was surprised at how little impact he had given his size. But what his calling card is that he's an explosive athlete. Like he's explosive off the snap. He runs really nice, crisp routes. He gets himself open, presents a gigantic target for the quarterback, and he catches everything. He finds a soft spot in the zone. He has a knack for that. They use him everywhere. He's versatile. Lines up out wide a lot. He lines up in line a lot. He lines up in the slot a lot. He's used in motion constantly in that Michigan offense. Like he's always in motion. I mean, he's a central piece of that offense. And he's just a high IQ player. Like he
Mm-hmm.
does everything. He's well coached. The cons, and this is kind of a big one. His yak ability, while good, is not elite. And we're talking about a guy who people are kind of projecting as a first round tight end. First round tight ends are tough. You're looking for elite traits, especially in things like yak, and he definitely doesn't have elite yak. He has okay yak, good yak. And like I said, like in block, if it's a con, it's just he's not like a high end blocker. He's an average to slightly below average run blocker. But overall, like I think Colston Loveland is a guy that you draft him not for blocking, you draft him to be a weapon in your pass game. He is like a receiver, and he's a gigantic target. And if you already have your receivers and you're building an offense that you want a big monster in the middle of the field wreaking havoc, a team will love Colson Loveland. I'm thinking the West Coast, Shanahan, McVay type offenses that love these kinds of guys like TJ Hawkinson, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these guys are absolute terrors in the middle of the field for those kinds of offense. So I see Loveland fitting in a place like that. But that's what I've got about him. What do you think about Colson Loveland?
Yeah, man. I mean, I knew I was gonna like Colson Loveland when we were big fans of JJ McCarthy last year, and with as much tape as we watched of JJ McCarthy, it was hard to miss Colson Loveland and be like, wow, this guy is going to be a top tight end in next year's class. He was a feature of that offense. And, we were also just a big fan of those Michigan players altogether. And he fits that mold of what we liked about those guys. And you mentioned it. He's just high IQ football player, and he looks like he's really well coached. And that's been the theme with these Michigan players. I like Colson Loveland. I will say he does not necessarily fit my style of tight end that I look for. I still like Loveland. I think you hit nail on the head with all the things he does well. You see, he's a very explosive athlete who is very, very reliable hands, and I think he's fine as a blocker, and I think he's fine after the catch. But to me, those are two areas where I see a lot of these, especially after the catch, where I see a lot of these great um, tight ends in the NFL succeed, where you see the Travis Kelce's one of the best players, finding a soft zone and then making work after the catch. George Kittle, Rob Gronkowski was that guy. You see it with Mark Andrews, you see it with TJ Hawkinson. These guys, you see it with new guy in the block, Sam Laporta. You don't see these guys as like catch the ball and get tackled immediately, and that's kind of what Colson Loveland is he can take the ball after catching it, take it in stride, but he pretty much always gets taken down by the first defender. Four missed tackles. He's got a few 5.5 yards after catch per route run or per route per reception. Sorry. But certainly not awful numbers, but it does worry me. The comparison I look back to about a guy who was awesome hands catcher, an explosive athlete, and I'm not comparing these two, but a guy who was a bad blocker and bad after catches, a guy like Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki had everything in the world from that standpoint to succeed. He was a fantastic athlete and was one of the best hands catchers in the NFL, as it still is. But he offers absolutely nothing after the catch and absolutely nothing as a blocker. I think Colson Loveland offers much more than him in both those areas, but it's just like how deficiencies in those areas can really sink you. So I'm not here to like shit on Loveland, but I like Loveland, but um, I would prefer somebody with a little bit more in those spots personally.
You can pull up Jabri's comment because it's an interesting comp. Um, he's basically a slightly less explosive Evan Ingram. I mean, that's not a terrible comp. He's a little bigger than Evan Ingram,
More reliable
but
hands.
more reliable hands than Evan Ingram. He doesn't drop much. But in terms of play style, I don't think that's a terrible comp because Evan Ingram is a guy like when used properly, is that stretch the field receiving threat, run seam
Mhm.
routes, really stretches down the field, can run a pretty full route tree for a guy who's playing tight end, and just be somebody who draws defenders to the middle of the field and opens things up for everybody else. So um, the way I look at Loveland is I know that some of the metrics that you like, we both care about. He's not elite. I just think he's such a game changer in terms of the attention he draws in the
Mhm.
middle of the field because of his route running ability and his size and the fact that he does it. He's just such a reliable receiver that I think he's one of these guys who changes the way defenses play you from the tight end position,
And
and
he's
that's
a safety valve for your quarterback
he's
too.
he's a safety valve and he's an elite receiving weapon.
Mhm.
Um, and I think from that perspective, he's a game changer, right? I mean, you saw it in Michigan. Like the Michigan receivers were nothing special, but teams had to respect the middle of the field because Colson Loveland was roaming there. And it made it easier for the Michigan receivers to get some separation and get some room. And they were able to work that. So I think that's how he's going to be used in the NFL. Is he's going to be like a big target draw in the middle of the field, and he's going to help supplement the offense that way. It's going to help everybody else get better. But let's get into his scores.
Yep.
Um, so speed and quickness, we both gave him a 4. He's definitely a more elite speed athlete than Fannis, even though he's a bigger guy. Route running, we both gave him a 4. He's definitely like a high level route runner for a tight end. Um, that's where I think the Evan Engram comp actually makes a lot of sense. Evan Engram was a pretty decent route runner coming out of
Yeah.
college
But for a tight end, for sure.
for a tight end. Yeah, hands, we both gave him a 4, just above average hands.
Yeah, I
Yak,
mean,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to comment where like comparing to Fannin, like I felt that he had like much better hands in the sense of like soft hands and high pointing stuff. He had some drop issues. While Fannin maybe was not quite to that level of soft hands and high pointing quite to the level, but he doesn't have any drop issues. So that's kind of where I was like justifying both, putting them both at fours just for different reasons.
Yep. Um, Yak, we both gave him a 3, and we just talked about that in detail. Like, we think he has kind of average Yak ability.
He's fine.
Blocking, same thing, average 3. And versatility, we both gave him a 4. He is an above average versatile player at the tight end position. I'll go through his snap counts real quickly. Like, I'll just give you this year so far. He has played 33% of his snaps in line. He's played 14% of his snaps wide and played 51% in the slot. So you can kind of use him everywhere. I mean, you see he's often used as a slot receiver or as an inline tight end, but he can do it all. And he has the athleticism to kind of be lined up everywhere. So he gets a good grade there. Overall, I gave him a 3.67. You had him at a 3.67 as well. Again, above average NFL tight end is how I look at him. Um, the IQ, we both gave him 4. We already
Mm-hmm.
mentioned why. Giants grade, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. I probably was a little skewed here because I just thought he's so bit of a game changer. You gave him a 3 on the Goon grade. I gave him a 4, and the only reason I gave him a 4 is because I just like the way he takes on defenders in the middle of the field. Like, he's not bowling them over, but he's kind of a fearless receiver. You know, like he'll catch balls in traffic, no
Yeah,
problem. So
that's
overall,
fair.
an above average player. And I think, he's being mocked in the first round. I can see him going in the first round. I can also see him falling to the second round, but not very far. Like, he's going probably top 40 picks.
Not past Jim Harbaugh in the second
If
round.
he gets to Harbaugh in the second round, that man is a Charger. Like,
Yeah.
100%, he's a Charger. And, if he falls, but I mean, this guy's perfect, obviously. I mean, Harbaugh knows it, but he really is perfect for what they want to do.
Jibber called it. Yeah, I mean, to your point with the contested catch, we had him as a 45.5% contested catch percentage last year. So very good number for.
Before we go to number 3, would you mind putting up Chris Peace's 2 comments? I have to
Yes.
comment on one of them. We'll do the first one. So I don't know how many people are listening right now, but remember, everybody, NFL.com fan of the year, NFL.com fan of the year, vote for Momo. Make Momo the fan of the year. First name Momo, last name in mom's basement. First name Momo, last name in mom's basement. Let's make Momo the NFL fan of the year. We want to make sure that he is forced to meet John Mara, whoever the GM is, and Daniel Jones. They should all go face to face with Momo. So please vote early, vote often, vote for Momo. Second comment: this is to hurt me. Chris writes, I'm going to rename last year's podcast to He Should Be a Giant, but is now a Commander. Yeah, because Adam Peters took every single fucking player that I wanted. Oh, Momo's here. There we are, Momo. When Momo says stop, and he means keep voting. Everybody, don't worry. Just keep voting
keep
for
voting.
Momo. Keep voting. All right. Let's move on to, what are we up to, number 3?
Number 3.
All right.
And
Who the hell
yeah.
is number 3?
No,
I got it. I got it. You're doing it, right?
yep.
I'm going
So
to pull this guy up.
number
Yeah.
3 was a guy that I made sure I pounded the table, make sure we got reviewed for this one. He ended up getting ranked number 3. Both Sal and I looked at him. Both of us liked him. Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU, 6'5", 255 pounds. He was a 3-star recruit. He's a true junior. He was a 2022 freshman all SEC. And fun fact about Mason Taylor, his father is Miami Dolphins great Jason Taylor, and his uncle is Miami Dolphins great Zach Thomas. I wrote Taylor, but Zach Thomas. So yeah, his Jason Taylor, fun fact, married Zach Thomas's sister, and then had great NFL pedigree. That is now Mason Taylor, tight end for LSU. Now, when we talk about guys that are not necessarily the type of tight end I like Loveland, that is not Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor is the exact type of tight end I like. I'll say, last year did not have the greatest year in the world. 60.9 PFF grade, 54.4 receiving, 71.9 run blocking. first, he had a really good freshman year. We'll go 38 receptions, 414 yards, and 3 touchdowns as a freshman, and only 36 receptions, 348 yards, and 1 touchdown last year. But he is off to an incredible start this year. Mason Taylor is a very impressive player. He like I said, he's what I look for. He is a very like another guy who's very soft handed. He looks like a very natural pass catcher. He just plucks the ball out of the air very effortlessly. And then once he gets that ball, he is a powerful and elusive runner after the catch. He is a very smooth mover. You can often find him sit down and find the soft spots in the zone, and he plays all over. I mean, they have him play out wide, they have him play in the slot, they have him play him in line, they have him play H back. He's done a little bit of everything. Um, on the negative side, I would say he's an average blocker, like at best. He definitely needs more strength there. There's not a ton of nuance to his route running. That's something he needs to improve. He's really good at finding like the soft spot and then moving from there and getting yards after the catch. But as far as like beating guys and man to man, that's not necessarily his game yet. And I would say he's a good, not great athlete. But, I think when you're looking at, what, like I mentioned earlier, the wide receivers, the tight ends that succeed today, it's those guys who can take advantage of a defenses, find those soft spots with how much zone a lot of these teams are running, hit there, catch the ball, get upfield, and get yards after the catch. Has NFL bloodlines, and it shows a lot of times when these guys do. Even though his dad wasn't a tight end, looks like such a natural at this position. Really, really big fan of Mason Taylor. I'll pull up some of his stats from this year so we can go over it. But why don't you give us some of your thoughts on Mason Taylor, Sal?
Yeah, no, I mean, you kind of forced me to watch Mason Taylor, and I said, you know what, you're right. This guy belongs near the top of our list. He's a really good tight end. I mean, you kind of went over everything. He's an all rounder. He does everything you want in a modern tight end. I think that's the way you described it. That's a good way to think about it. I'm not going to go into all the stuff he said already because you already said it. He's a really good receiver. He's not a great blocker, but he's certainly a decent blocker, and I think he could stand to gain some mass. He's 6'5". I think he could gain a little bit more play strength, and he'll be fine at the NFL level as a blocker. That's a lot of that is technique. Um, what you can't teach are his just instincts, um, and the way he plays, which is something we see with these NFL bloodline guys. They just understand the game, and you see that with the way he runs routes and finds that soft spot in zone to be a target for his quarterback. I have his stats. I'm going to go over them real quickly. So this year, he has played 5 games. He has 28 receptions in 34 targets, so an 82.4 reception percentage. That's really solid. 280 yards. He only has 1 touchdown. That came against South Carolina. Um, Now, in terms of his advanced metrics, his yak numbers are solid. He's getting 5.9 yards after the catch per reception. Again, anything above 5 is, like, really good. Um, and in terms of yards per route run, it's not as impressive as the guys we just went over, but more in line with what you see from tight ends, 1.64. Um, and I think that's don't be shocked when you see numbers like that for tight ends. That's kind of what tight ends do.
Yeah.
They're in the high ones. The good ones are like in the high ones, low twos. It's the freaks of the freaks are in like the 2.5 plus range, like Colston Loveland, and of course, no, tight end one from our class, Fan and Junior. Um, he's a good tight end. This guy's plug and play. He's a starter. You basically don't have to take him off the field. He can line up wide. He can line up in the slot like the other guys. A little bit less wide. He only has about 7% of his snaps out wide. He's more of a slot receiver.
Hmm.
36% of his snaps are in the slot, 55% inline. But that number, 36%, I think was one of the highest numbers I saw for the slot for tight ends in this class. And you see him often using the slot. Now that could be the LSU offense, but I do think he's kind of a natural slot tight end. Used very often in a way that reminded me of how Darren Waller was used, both with the Giants and with the Raiders. Not the receiver Waller was, but usage wise, I thought he was similar. So I think he's just really good all around. I mean, I see this guy as a kind of a solid day two type player, right? I mean, I think he's going to be a starting tight end in the NFL.
Yeah, and if he tests well, his athleticism's good, not great on tape, but I think testing well will help even more with the guy projecting guy out. I'll throw a couple more numbers at you from this year. One, his missed tackled force this year. His missed tackled force, he has 6 of them already on the year, which is
Yeah,
fourth in all of college football. Fannin 16.
yeah,
Um,
that's nuts.
Stowers, who we talked about on our freak list, he has 7. Jake Newell, and then Mason Taylor is next. So he is right up there. Really impressive with the missed tackles forced already. And I'll also throw out there with his contested catches. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, he's a favorite target of him so far. He's kind of his safety valve, and he's going to him whether he's open or not. And so far on the year, he has been targeted 5 times in contested catch situation. He's brought in 4 of them, so he's an 80% contested catch rate so far. So really strong hands there, and on top of a guy who's really forced a lot of missed tackles. So I've been really impressed with what I've seen him become a favorite target of Garrett Nussmeier this year.
Yeah, I think he's a solid NFL type player. So do you want to go through his grades real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's pull it up. So we got up there. So remember, the top box is Monty's. The one under that is the one I score. Speed and quickness, we both gave him a 3. So average NFL speed quickness right off the bat. Route running, we both gave him a 3. Average NFL route running for a tight end.
Hmm.
I think he's closer to a 4 than he is to a 2. But higher into 3, I would say.
Yeah, I would say he does have some like struggles with like nuances, right? Like I said, but like there's certain things that he does really well, like find soft spots of his own. It's kind of hard to like when you don't have something specific for that, you kind of have to factor all that in. I would say with that factored in, he's probably higher on 3.
We both gave him a 4 with hands. He's very reliable as a receiver, near 90% catch percentage on targets. Yak, he's a 4. Again, he's almost like 6 yards of yak per reception. Average NFL blocker with a 3 score and versatility 4 for the reasons I mentioned. They line him up kind of all over. Overall composite score, I got 3.5. You got 3.5, like right down the middle. So we got identical scores on him. IQ 3. I think you could have gone to a 4 here with some of. I thought about
Honestly,
giving a 4,
yeah,
just
I
the way
honestly
he.
probably think I should have gone 4, but that's all right.
Yeah, Giants grade 3. And that's not a reflection of him necessarily. It's just where we are.
Yeah.
And the Goon grade we both gave him a 3. There's nothing goonish about this guy. He's just a good football player.
Yeah. No, I think all that checks out. Actually, another comp here from Debris. Don't hate that one either. Hunter Henry. I could see a little bit of Hunter Henry to his game.
Yeah, absolutely. Good football player.
Yep.
All right. Shall we go to number 4?
Yeah, let's get to number 4.
All right. I'm gonna pull him up on my other list here. Give me 1 second. But number 4 on our list is a guy who doesn't have a lot of tape yet because he was sitting behind somebody else last year. But it's tight end Oscar Delp from the University of Georgia. He is a junior, 6'5", 245 pounds, 4-star recruit out of high school. I think he was a top tight end recruit out of Georgia when he came out. He was a high school lacrosse player. Thought he was going to get lacrosse scholarships and football scholarships. Ended up getting a lot of football interests and went there to play tight end at Georgia. He sat behind Brock Bowers for a few years. It's hard to get reps. He played when Bowers was hurt, and he was used mainly as a blocking tight end, with Bowers getting the majority of the receiving reps. PFF scores from last year: 66.3 overall, 64.5 receiving grade, and a 56.3 pass blocking grade. He had only 24 receptions and 29 targets last year for 284 yards. Those are all in games where Bowers was hurt for the most part. 142 yak yards, 5.9 yak per reception, which again is solid. He had 3 touchdowns and forced 5 missed tackles. What you notice as the pros for Oscar Delp when you watch him, and you need more reps because there's not from a lot from last year. You just saw him when Bowers was hurt. But if you watch him with Bowers, you saw a good blocker. I mean, that's something that stood out to me when I watched it. I don't know if you did. You get a chance to get
I
into much
did.
of his stuff? I
Yeah.
thought he was a really solid inline pass blocker. Like they
Hmm.
used him frequently, just taking on defensive ends, and he did a great job. He would anchor down and move these guys, anchor down and not let them pass. Really good pass blocker in line, um, and he allowed that offense to go because he was like an extra offensive tackle on the field. So that was just a noticeable strength of his that I saw. He's a willing run blocker. I don't think he's a great run blocker, especially as a move blocker. I thought he was a little bit soft. When you ask him to go down the field at his size and athleticism, I would expect him to bowl guys over. He doesn't really do that. Kind of like just shoves them a little bit. Doesn't really
Hmm.
move them too much. But he still gets the job done. Um, what makes him special are his exceptional movement skills. I think you
Yeah.
watch him. He looks different out there. He doesn't look like the typical tight end. He moves with a fluidity and speed and explosiveness that you don't typically see in tight ends. I think that is the lacrosse background. The way he runs around, he looks like a lacrosse player out there. His routes are very crisp. Like he doesn't round out his routes. He runs quick, crisp, sharp angles. For a guy who didn't get a lot of running routes, I was impressed by how he did that last year and the games I watched from this year. Very smooth athlete overall, versatile. They used him as H back, inline, slot, outside. Solid, good, just good hands. He doesn't drop stuff. Good yak, great athlete. I just think he's a very, very high potential player, and I think that if he had had a chance to play, we might be talking about him even higher on this list. He sat behind Brock Bowers, generational talent, and I think you just kind of have to see how he does this year. But we're going on an awful lot of projection potentials. The cons, like I said, the run blocking in space left a lot to be desired for me. He had a couple of fumbles, not a lot, but one last year, one this year so far. And again, we need more reps. So I like what I saw. I think this is a talented player. I think he has all the desired traits that you want in a tight end, and he has exceptional movement skills and route running ability for the position while offering a lot as an inline blocker, reliable catcher. But I think there are elements of his game that need refinement, especially run blocking. That's how I saw him. But what are your takes on Oscar Del?
Yeah, man. I thought you hit on everything pretty well. It makes a little bit more sense. You were teasing a little bit Oscar Delp being like a better blocker and Brock Bowers, and I didn't get where you're going. But when you talk about as a pass blocker, I definitely could see that because I'm with you. I didn't see a very impressive run blocker like I did with Brock Bowers, but he did have some moments in pass blocking that did impress me. Especially from this year when I was watching him in his game this
Mhm.
year, he was really looks like he's taking a step there. Oscar Delp is a guy where I could have rated him like we'll get into the grades, but I could have graded him pretty low in a lot of areas, but I also could have graded him pretty high. And it just comes down to how much I want to leave up projection because this guy is he looks like a tight end when you watch him on the field. He looks like a super smooth, natural athlete who at that tight end position. And but the issue is it's pretty clear to me he is not developed enough at that position. To be honest with you, I think he could benefit a lot from going back to Georgia, from what I've seen this year and developing another year. If I was a team, I would have no problem taking a shot at this guy maybe of like a comp third, early day three, and develop a guy like this because I do think he has what it takes to be a very good tight end in this league. But I think he's still pretty far away from contributing at the NFL level. But I do think that it's pretty clear when you watch him that this guy is an NFL prospect despite that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's got the talent, but I kind of agree with you. He's young. He has more eligibility left. I think he needs, unless he has a massive breakout from now till the end of the year, which he might. But unless he has that, I think it might serve him better to have another year in college because he has the requisite talent and traits that I feel like with more reps in Georgia, I can see him being like viewed as like a borderline first round pick a year from now. And he's certainly not that right now.
Yeah.
So he may go back, but I think if he does declare, like you said, if this guy falls to early day three, like right where the Giants would take somebody, right? Like he might
That's their
be a
spot.
guy that like they love taking guys that pick 100 and something, right? So 100 to 110, whatever. Um, I kind of see him. I projected him as a day two talent, but I think you're right. I think if he, unless he has a big leap from now to the end of the year, you're probably looking at like an early day three guy.
Yeah.
And that's probably where he's going to go. But the upside is tremendous with this guy. Um,
Without a doubt. And he's going to
right,
test very well if he does come out.
right. And here's what I would say about him in comparison to like I know because this is going to give Giant fans a lot of aggravation. Going to think about upside. They're going to be like, "What about Theo Johnson? He had a lot of upside." He Theo Johnson's athleticism, in my opinion, never showed up on tape the way it showed up at testing. Like never. I just did. I know some people will disagree, but I don't think I saw him, show that level of explosiveness and speed and power on the field with consistency the way he showed it at the combine. I do think with Delp, he's going to test well, and I think you see his athleticism on tape. It's very
He's very
obvious.
smooth.
Yeah. Let's go to the grading system. So speed and quickness, we both gave him a 4. You can see again. You'll see him when you guys watch him. He's a very quick athlete.
Yeah. I'll
Route
I'll
running,
say
yeah,
at
yeah.
one point in time, 15 years ago, you could argue this is a 5, but with the freaks that we're seeing coming out nowadays, he's probably stuck at a 4. But he's a great
He's
athlete.
he's above average. But
Yeah.
route running, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. I'm gonna guess you gave him a 3 because you just don't see enough, and I'm giving him a 4 because I saw just enough reps with the way he handles himself at the stem where I thought this guy's gonna be a very good route runner in the NFL.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. He has flashes of greatness as a route runner. I just didn't think it was consistent enough.
That's fair. The sample size is very small.
Mhm.
Hands, we both gave him a 3. I think he's average there.
Mhm.
He definitely needs to work on a little bit. Yak, we gave him a 3. Same thing. He's good, not great there.
Flashes.
Blocking, blocking overall, we gave him a 3. But again, it's a very skewed number because pass blocking, I might give him a 5. Run
Mhm.
blocking, I might give him a 2. Like
Yeah.
but overall, he was like a 3. Versatility, we both gave him a 4. He does line up everywhere. IQ, I gave him a 3. I think that would go up hopefully by next year if he's still in
Mhm.
college. Giants grade, I'm gonna say 3, but like he really might be like if he's in the draft, Oscar Delp might be the guy the Giants take if they take another fourth round flyer. Like he's gonna be there. Like
Yeah.
it'll be right. And a Goon grade we gave him a 3.
Yep.
Any
Yeah.
any other thoughts on Delp?
No, man, I think that all just basically fits who he is. He's high ceiling type prospect, but he's got a lot of work to do.
All right. Why don't you do so we have 2 more guys to go over, and we split these up. So why don't you go over your last guy, and I'll go over my last guy after that.
Sounds good. Oh, I don't think we said it. My final was a 3.33 for Delp, and Sal's was 3.5 for anybody listening.
Yeah, still
Um,
above average, like slightly above average. So we think he again, even a guy who we're like kind of criticizing, we see like talent that might be above an NFL average.
yeah, it's tough with Delp because it's like you can go either way with a lot of that stuff. If you want
Just
to
sample
project or
size.
not. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of variance with him.
All right. So for my guy that I took Jake Burnstall from Clemson. He's a tight end. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. He was a unanimous 4-star recruit. He's a senior at Clemson. Last year he had 59.9 PFF grade, 65.5 receiving grade, 58.7 run blocking grade. He has 50 receptions for 498 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1.25 yards per route run. It's kind of average to below average at the tight end position. 4.4 yards after catch per receptions, average to below average. 2 drops, 7 missed tackles forced. So you did have some missed tackles forced to go along with that, even though you didn't have the most yards after catch reception. But to go into my thoughts on this guy, he is a very athletic football player, and he is a long athlete. And you heard he's 6'6". He looks very big when he's out on the field. Not necessarily built, but he's very, very tall and is in strides. He's an athlete who can really challenge defenses vertically from the tight end position, but also offers a safety valve to these guys. I feel like he was he's been that guy for Klubnik and has been a guy who can find those soft spots and zones and be somebody available for him, and is a really good contested catch guy from what I could tell. And a lot of guys have him ranked really high. I've seen him as the number 2 tight end for a few people, and I get it. And he's a really good athlete, and he is really apparent on tape, and he's a good route runner in my opinion. Like he runs routes like a wide receiver. He has very good athleticism where um, has the ability to do that. I see he has really good feet and kind of sets these guys up. You don't necessarily see the separation and the release off his feet to what you want to see, but from a tight end, I was pretty impressive with his footwork. He's also, I felt like he could tempo his routes pretty well. And there's at times where you would see him run over to like go block a guy, he'd be going to like run and block a middle linebacker, and he'd kind of put a hand on him and then like fake and run up field and be like a target. Like he did a really good job of like selling these play actions, like he was about to go block a linebacker and then take off. And I thought he did that really well. So, and he's a guy who played all over for them, especially from like maybe wasn't necessarily the fullback for them, but a guy who played basically every wide receiver position for them. From the cons, he's a guy definitely had an occasional drop. He didn't have a ton of drops. He had like 2 last year and like 1 this year or something, but like some of the drops I saw were pretty egregious. So that's something to monitor. I don't think he's like a natural hand catcher. He has some spectacular catches. I saw him make a one-handed catch. He can make some spectacular catches, but from like consistency basis, I see him, make some body catches and kind of trap some footballs. I'd like to see more of a natural hands catcher. I think he lacks kind of punch and anchor as a blocker, and he doesn't offer a ton after the catch. I will add this to him as a blocker, though. He is a very, very impressive blocker to me in space. He does not offer the punch or the anchor because he doesn't have that type of strength, and that he gets beat up. He's really not an inline tight end. That's something that I think he's going to struggle with at the NFL. But when he gets on these defensive backs, he has really good athleticism and really good length that he puts himself in position on these guys and is able to move and get in front of these guys and stay in front of them and use his length to get these blocks. He's a very willing blocker. I know we've heard that before, but I don't think he could hold up inside, but I do think he is a legitimate advantage going up when he's lined up at wide receiver. I know I didn't say much from the tight end position, but even linebackers, I felt like he did decent. It's just the D line that he really struggled against. Do you have anything on this guy before I jump into the number side? You don't think you really had a chance to look at him, right?
I didn't get a chance to see him, no, so I'm gonna leave you
Okay.
to finish up on him. Yep.
So I'll just give you my numbers on it. I am a 4 for speed and quickness. Honestly, a high 4. Like I could see this guy testing really well. He's a really good athlete who, especially with his straight line vertical speed, you could really see it pop. And like I said, like he uses athleticism, blocking, and like his agility was definitely solid. So really solid route runner. I thought his footwork was really good for a tight end. That his hands, just traps some footballs, body catches some footballs, and has an occasional drop. He does some spectacular stuff too. I just ended up leaving it at 3, but definitely not super impressed with hands. Doesn't offer a lot after the catch. He had some missed tackles forced there of like 7, but when I watched him, I wasn't overly impressed. Block 2, just because look, if you're tight end, you need to be able to be an inline blocker, and I don't see that from him. So although I was really impressed at his willingness as a blocker and his ability to put himself in the right spot, like when like he gets motioned across and had to like basically was the puller. Like, no, he did not get movement, but he would get in front of the defender and it would seal a gap for these guys to take off. Like he was in the right place. He just doesn't have the strength to provide movement. So ultimately I gave him a 3 for versatility because although he moves around all over the place. And theoretically, he should get a 4. The fact that I don't think he's going to offer much as an inline tight end, I knocked him down to a 3. Even though he offers a ton of versatility out wide. 3 IQ, thought he was solid there. I mean, 3 Giants grade. We don't necessarily have a guy like this, so it's not necessarily a bad fit. And kind of a little closer. I mean, outside of Cager, who hasn't really been anything for us. Then Goon graded the 3. He's a very willing guy, not a pushover, but he's not the strongest dude. So not much to say there. But yeah, that's what I had about on him. Still, I think people are gonna be really interested in him, and they are. He's very very high on a lot of people's lists.
All right. That leaves us with one more guy. I'll go into him. I don't think you had a chance to really watch him much. But the guy I'm going to review for you guys is one to watch is Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State, 6'6", 261 pounds, the big boy, 3-star recruit. He is a senior. Last year, he had PFF scores of 70.3 overall, 65.7 in the receiving game, and 45.9 as a pass blocker. This year, he's flipped that on its head. This year, his PFF scores are 81.3 overall, 87.3 as a receiver, and 72.2 as a pass blocker. These are his stats for this year for so far, and I'm going to go into them before I get into the evaluation. But we talked about the yards per route run. A lot of these guys are in the high 1s to low 2s, and we're happy with that with tight ends. We're thrilled with the high numbers. This guy's at right now 2.95 yards per route run in 2024. That's exceedingly high for a tight end. It's a little skewed by one game because they've only played 4 games, and in one game he went absolutely like ridiculous. So you might have to see how that averages out, but so far it looks really good. And he has 6.5 yak per route per reception. So 6.5 yards of yak per reception. That number is also a little on the high side, but he had a big number last year too. He was at 7.7 over the course of a whole season. So some good advanced metrics. You have to see how it plays out. Let me tell you guys what I saw about this guy. He is a big kid. He's got a big, solid size frame. Like I said, 6'6", 260. He looks every bit of 6'6", 260. The dude looks like a gigantic bear out there. He's a very good inline blocker in both pass pro and in the run game. He moves guys at the line of scrimmage, and he's like an extra lineman out there. When he's in space, we mentioned 2 guys right now who we said are not great like move blockers in the run game. This guy is a monster as a move blocker in the run game. He gets out in space and he takes on linebackers and DBs and he finishes them in the middle of the field. Like he'll take them right to the ground and they're just on their ass, done. He acts like an offensive lineman out there. Very impressive stuff. I don't think in the tape review I saw that he's an elite receiver. I thought he was a reliable receiver. The stats do bear that out. He had 20 receptions and 25 targets this year, so 80% receiving rate, 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last year, he was around 69.4%, so that number has gotten better. I'm talking about this year's tape. He's mainly good because he's a gigantic target for his quarterback. I don't think he's like any kind of elite route runner, but he gets out there and presents a huge target for his quarterback. And he's kind of an outlet. The quarterback finds him. In this case, Drew Allar will find him, and he catches everything that comes his way. He has reliable, solid hands. He has good yak ability, especially this year. And he's basically improved his production overall as a receiver this year, where he wasn't as productive. Now, that said, last year, even though I didn't think he was super productive, he was more productive than Theo Johnson. He did more than Theo Johnson in that offense. Now, where he's a con, I don't think he's a good route runner. I watched him, and he reminds me a lot of Theo Johnson, the way he runs his routes. I don't know what they're doing over there in terms of coaching, but they round out their routes. They don't sell it easy, and it's just easy to kind of diagnose for DBs. Again, his utility was somewhat limited in the past game before this year. We'll see how it plays out. And he is very versatile, but most of his value is limited to the inline game. Bottom line to me, he's a very solid tight end overall, good size frame for the position. He stays on the field in both the run game and the pass games. He can be used as a blocker, can be used as a move tight end in space. He can be used as an outlet receiving option. and he has solid hands, but I think that his limitations as a receiver do limit his upside value right now. We have to see if it goes up this year in 2024. The reason I'm a little reticent to say it will is because when you look at his 2024 stats, like those some of the really good numbers I posted, like his yak per route per reception and his yards per route run were heavily, heavily skewed by the game against Bowling Green. He went absolutely nuts against Bowling Green. He had 8 targets for and 8 receptions for 146 yards that game. Didn't have a touchdown, but 8 for 8 for 146. He had 10.8 yak yards per reception in that game. He had a total of 86 yak yards. That's an insane number. And his yards per route run were like it was some bananas number. I'll have to find it here, but it was 6.64 in that game. In the other games, his yards per route run are 1.5, 2.17, 1.48. Those numbers are more in line with what I thought I saw on film. The Bowling Green game was a little bit of an outlier. We'll see if he can do that again.
Tight
But
end group.
overall, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Overall, though, good football player, like solid, just not anything special. Like I didn't see anything elite here. To me, this is firmly a day 3 tight end. Like I might have written day 2 on him just because of his production, but like my gut tells me this is more of like a day 3 type guy, 4th roundish, 5th roundish type of tight end. And I think in the NFL, he's gonna be very much like a blocker. Like a blocking tight end who can offer just enough in the run in the receiving game where you're not using him exclusively as a blocker. You're letting him catch some outlets from your quarterback, but he's not like a feature of your passing game. That's kind of how I view him. I'll go to his grades real quickly. Speed and quickness, I gave him a 3. I think he's about average. Route running, 3. I could have gone to a 2 here,
Yeah.
to be honest. I gave him a 3 to be kind of generous, to be honest. Hands were 4. They were reliable. Yak, I'm giving him a 4 based on this year. I can't unsee the one game, you know?
Yeah.
He's probably more like a 3.
Hmm.
Blocking, he's a solid 4. Versatility, he's a 3. Overall, I gave him a 3.5. Again, I probably could drop him down a couple of notches, but I gave him the credit for what he did put on tape this year.
Hmm.
IQ was a solid 3. Giants grade was a 3, and Goon grade was I like the way he plays physical. I gave him a 4. But overall, a solid player. I just don't see an elite player here.
Yeah. Sounds about right. And yeah, I mean, if you give him the knocks in those spot, I think probably pretty similar to where I had my guy. So we'll see at the end of the season though when we kind of take a final look at these guys and readjust some of these.
All right. I think that's all of our tight ends.
Yep.
Let's quickly go to close this thing out by going over some college games that are coming up.
Yeah. Let's
Have
take a look
you?
at.
So yeah, looking at the schedule, there's a game tomorrow. Not a couple of games tomorrow night. Texas State against Troy. That sounds like a barn burner. And Sam Houston versus UTEP. So if you're a junkie, you can watch one of those two, or you can watch Thursday Night Football. On Friday, Jacksonville State versus Kennesaw State. Houston TCU might be interesting. I believe they benched Donovan Smith. I don't know if he's going to be back on the field. But Michigan State, Oregon's a good one for Friday night. And then if you really want to get crazy, you can watch superstar hero quarterback, scorned quarterback, Kyle McCord of Syracuse versus UNLV. Kyle McCord is tearing shit up at Syracuse. I don't know if you've paid attention to it.
He's my college fantasy quarterback. He's been tearing it up.
He's
I have to be there.
Yeah, Ohio State's going to regret that, boy. So anyway, on Saturday, there's a couple of interesting matchups. Like I like Missouri, Texas A&M. That looks like a fun game. Um,
Hmm.
and there are a couple of others I saw here personally. Just going through the list. Iowa, Ohio State's always fun. Auburn, Georgia's always fun. Ole Miss, South Carolina, I think is very interesting. So this is a 3:30 game on ESPN. And the reason it's interesting is even though Ole Miss is a road favorite, this is like a real matchup issue for Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart has had a cakewalk until last week, and he was torching bad football teams. And then last week when they played Kentucky, he struggled.
Hmm.
Um, South Carolina is probably about on par with Kentucky as a defensive team.
They have a fucking 6-star at defensive end freshman.
Right.
That kid is
The freshman
incredible.
defensive end is like, yeah, he's like freaking. I mean, he looks like goddamn like Von Miller out there. Like
He's
he's just like wrecking
incredible.
shit. Yeah. Like, um, but this is, I think, a decent test for Jackson Dart, for those who are believers in Jackson Dart. You want to see him do really well against this team. But those are sort of my contributions to this. Do you have any games you're watching?
Yeah, I think, for people who are monitoring Cam Ward, I think these next 2 weeks you really should keep an eye on. I think, Miami versus Cal, 10:30 on ESPN. Cal's got a decent defense. Just some quick PFF grades on it: 86.7 and a 90.1 coverage grade. I'd have to look into it a little bit more if they have NFL eligible like prospects there from a defensive back situation, but that's a really good coverage grade. And they have a decent defense. He did tear them up last year when they were in the Pac-12. So, hopefully for his stock, he does it again. But, Cal this week, Louisville next week. I think those are, he's not playing a lot of serious competition here in the ACC. That's the Cal's up there as one of the better teams he's going to face. So keep an eye on it.
All right. I think that kind of wraps it up for us. One more game I'll mention before we do close it out, and it's just for fun for you locals out there. Rutgers at Nebraska. This should be a fun game. I mean, Dylan Raiola has been fun to watch on that Nebraska team, the freshman quarterback sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And our guy Kyle Monangai, the running back from Rutgers, has been having an outstanding season. So he's a guy that I can 100% see getting on the Giants. I hope so. He runs he runs a lot like Isaiah Pacheco. Like it's a lazy comp, but he plays like him. So I kind of enjoy guys who play like they hit their head against the wall too many times as a kid. No concern.
Side note, just for one last thing that I think is crazy. Everybody knows we've already done a running back group. Ashton Genty playing out of this world, very well could win the Heisman this year. He's going up against Utah State. No, nothing special. Because of the performance he's had, his betting lines right now are fucking absurd, man. Let me just read you some of these. He is minus 3,500 to be an anytime touchdown score in that game. So you would have to bet $3,500 to win $100. He is minus 480 to score 2 touchdowns. So you've bet $480 to win $100 there. And he's minus 155 to score 3 touchdowns. So if you bet $155 to win $100, that he scores 3 touchdowns. And then maybe the most absurd one of it all, his over under for his rushing yards of that game is 195.5. Basically, the over under is if he's going to hit 200 yards rushing. That's these don't exist. That's not like nobody else has even 110 as their over. He's almost at 200.
Insane.
He's a
Insane.
freak.
Yeah. I'll put in one last plug before we close it out today. We've been on the podcast circuit this week. I don't know how it worked out that way, but we should give a shout out to the folks who invited us on. So
Yeah.
Monday night, I was on. I recorded with Coach Gene Clemens, and he was kind enough to invite me on to his podcast, A Giant Issue, and I think he released it today. So for those who can check it out, look up Coach Gene Clemens, A Giant Issue. Coach Clemens invited me, and we talked about roster construction under Joe Shane, and we had a really candid discussion about how we view things going on. Those who know me know exactly how I feel about Joe Shane and how this roster has been constructed, and where we're headed. The other one I want to give a shout out to is our boy R0B Rob, and he was kind enough to invite us onto his pod yesterday night. I had to kind of be in and out of that episode because I was dealing with some stuff at home. I was like going back and forth, but you were on the whole time.
Yep.
And maybe you can plug that one a little bit for Rob.
Yeah, go check out R0B. He has all that on his channel. That's
The Giants Talk podcast.
Yep, Giants Talk podcast. Started Long Live Past started the podcast with Past Stone. We were back on it. not when we were doing a pod, but back in the day when, they were doing it, and he just brought it back and we were one of the first guests to come on now that Sal and I are doing a podcast together. So, we talked some Giants, talked some college prospects. I know a lot of you have been begging us for some quarterback talk. There was a little bit of quarterback talk in there. So, go check it out. We talked a little bit. So, yeah, definitely go check out the pod. Go and support them.
All right. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys. As always, follow us at Queens_guy, at MONTECRI5TO, at He's a Giant Pod. Like, subscribe, hit the like button on if you don't mind before you close it out tonight. Tell your friends and pass on the word, retweet us. We appreciate it. We're building up this database once again with a little bit more data, and we're going to build up for draft season because that's what we care about as Giant fans. We're playing the Seahawks on Sunday night. I don't care. Go win the game. Please stop embarrassing us. Other than that, go Giants.
Fuck it. Go Giants.
Fuck it, go Giants.